history, and then the numbers, the timeline cards and artist cards that we're referring to, and then some of the grammar that you might just mention. You may not explain all of it, depends on your class, how much time you have. And then an overview of the warm-up activity, and then on the back some tips about the project itself, and then either for tutor email or mention in the class of things that students could continue to explore this project and this grammar more at home. So first off, we are talking about Thomas Gainsborough. So here 1727 to 1788, artist card number 18. And there's really great information about Gainsborough on the artist card for our community. If you, I will bring mine with me. If anyone wants to use that in their class, they're certainly welcome to share that. And then to contrast that to Peale, who was a neoclassic artist. So going back to the classical art style, and Thomas Gainsborough is in Rococo, which is defined in the lesson plan a little bit here, but very wispy, light brush strokes, still kind of extravagant looking as compared to Peale, who very crisp, kind of much more clear details, less about the artistic style, more realistic looking. Okay, so that, if you, just probably for the older classes, you might compare those two. Another artist in the Artists and Composers pack, that's the landscape artist, and I printed off one of his examples that you can show while you're doing the project, is Thomas Cole, who's a little bit later than Gainsborough, also on here. And I also talked about the influence, just one line out of another book, about the Age of Enlightenment, timeline card number 101, how that influenced artists during this period of time. However much that information you want to jump into with your class. Okay, so some of the grammar. Oh, and then this already is in the binders. Copies of this. One of Gainsborough's most famous works is the Blue Boy here, but his other portrait works, and then this kind of shows that Rococo style, which he was so well known for, kind of a perfect example of that artistic style. Particularly seen in the clothing, right, and his kind of fanciful landscapes also. Okay, so grammar, the artistic style, Rococo, landscape, defining that for the younger kids, and then going back over from our drawing lesson, perspective, so scale, smaller things towards that horizon line, larger in the foreground area. Vanishing point, not that you need to draw that for the painting, but just talking about that's where everything's getting smaller to that point. Foreground, background, details, the clarity, there's going to be a lot clear details here. Here's one of the examples of Gainsborough's work. So there's a lot more detail here than there is in these back areas where it's just little dabs of color to suggest trees versus the details of leaves. And then Thomas Cole is a great example, this one, of atmospheric perspective. So things as they get closer to that horizon line, the top and the bottom, that they're less detail, much lighter, much more contrast in the foreground area. These colors are much darker, richer here, and kind of more muddled towards the horizon line. Just just exaggerating that contrast to give that depth of perspective here. And then in the color wheel, our grammar there, right? So primary colors, the circles, secondary colors, the triangles, and then tertiary colors are these rectangles between. And really tertiary colors are anything between primary colors and secondary colors. So there's lots and lots of those. And then for Gainsborough lesson here, also mentioning tints, so adding white to a color, or also called hue, or a shade, which is adding black to a color to make it darker. So there's several copies of these in the binders, so that you can have one for each student to refer to. And So for the warm-up, you may want to have students just look at this and just talk through what the primary colors are, secondary colors, and tints and shades. Or there is a copy for each of the students and tutors to use your paint and fill in just a couple. I wouldn't spend too much time on this. We will also refer to these color wheel worksheets and the filled in one next week for working on Monet in watercolor. So we'll keep these for sure for next week too. Don't send them home with students. Okay, so our paint, move that off to the side. And some of those details about perspective are on these example sheets too, and I would leave these out for students on the table while we're doing our projects so that they can have an idea, just not spending too much time on how they want to lay out their landscape, but maybe copy one of these ideas of having a river kind of go through the middle, or a road, how to lay out trees, if you're going to have a big tree kind of towards in the foreground area, or maybe even in the water, and just how to layer in some clouds. So just kind of focusing on those. Okay, so our project then. So for little people, I'm going to just tape down the paper so that we can focus on that and not chase our paper around the table. And I also laid out the paint. Maybe you can have a mom do this while you're getting set up and talking about the artist. In the same way as it is on the color wheel, and just putting the white and the black off to this side a little bit, depending on how much room there's on plate, of course. So that for little people especially, it's easier for them to mix the colors that is just straight away here, if you're going to have them just dab a little bit on here and set that worksheet aside. Or if you're just talking about the example, then it's not as important. Okay, so then we're going to just do